Hi guys, in today's video, I'll discuss my hypothesis on the purpose of the multiple pyramids in Egypt. In my last video, I laid out reasons why I think the multiple shafts on the Giza Plateau were part of an ancient mining system, excavated by prehistoric machinery. If these shafts were mine shafts, then what possible role could the pyramids have played in this complex operation? I know some of us have heard about the theory that the Great Pyramid of Giza was an ancient power plant. This power plant theory was proposed in 1994 by the great scholar Christopher Dunn, who explained how the interior chambers and passageways inside the Great Pyramid would act as a power plant. He also compared the Great Pyramid with Nikola Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower. Some researchers claim that the Great Pyramid might be an ancient version of the Tesla Tower, which generated and transmitted electricity by connecting to underground aquifers. All of this sounds exciting, but is it fact or fantasy? First, I want to point out that most studies are focused on the Great Pyramid, but other pyramids don't get as much attention, not even Khafre, which is sitting right next to the Great Pyramid. I believe we shouldn't single out the Great Pyramid without comparing it to other similar ones. We need to consider these large pyramids as a group. If the Great Pyramid was a power plant, then what was the purpose of the nearby Khafre Pyramid? Another power plant? No, because the Khafre Pyramid, like the other big pyramids in Egypt, is almost completely solid. There is no chamber inside its stone block built body. It only has underground passageways and chambers which are carved into the bedrock. And what about the other big pyramids such as the ones in Dashur and Saqqara? Similar to the Khafre Pyramid, they are all predominantly solid, with a very small fraction of their interiors containing pathways and chambers. So, the Great Pyramid is an outlier. If the Great Pyramid with its interior chambers and passageways was really a power plant, then why are all the other similar-looking pyramids pretty much solid and packed with stone blocks? Isn't that strange? By the way, I don't think the other pyramids acted as transmitters. The Khafre Pyramid is too close to the Great Pyramid. It doesn't make sense to build two gigantic pyramids side by side, with one being the power plant and the other being the transmitter. There are also pyramids in Dashur and Saqqara. If they were energy transmitters, why were they placed so close to each other? Is that because one was not sufficient, whereby a group of pyramids was required? Let's not forget it's incredibly difficult to build just one of these structures, because millions of tons of stone blocks would need to be maneuvered. If a civilization was sophisticated enough to build all these pyramids, shouldn't they have better, more efficient ways to transmit energy? If one pyramid was not good enough to do the energy transmitting job, why not think of another way? Why incur so much labor, material, resources, and time to build these immense objects if they were inefficient transmitters? Please keep these questions in mind because I'll come back to them later. I found a very interesting article on the Ancient Origins website written by Jonathan Perrin, which link is below. Mr. Perrin explained in detail what the power plant theory was built upon and why this theory doesn't work. Chris Dunn proposed that inside the Great Pyramid, the shafts of the Queen's chambers was a reservoir of liquid hydrated zinc chloride and dilute hydrochloric acid meant to produce hydrogen gas. This would have filled the Grand Gallery and the King's Chamber. Then atmospheric microwave energy would have entered the King's Chamber via the north shaft, where it would have been amplified via the hydrogen gas, itself energized via the transduced energy of the vibrational pulses, and then emitted via the south shaft as a focused microwave beam. Dunn suspected the Egyptians would have then used this microwave energy to power machines and appliances. However, there are problems with this theory. First of all, the passageways and chambers in the Great Pyramid cannot hold water. The interior of the chambers and tunnels were not waterproof. Some may argue that the waterproofing was eroded due to time and the elements. But we are talking about the interior of the Great Pyramid, which is protected from the elements. There could be wear and tear from human activities, but the higher portion of the chambers shouldn't have been affected. The shafts and chambers cannot sustain water, which Mr. Perrin stated, quote, therefore ruling out the power plant theory and any other that requires liquid to be stored there, unquote. Mr. Perrin, a geologist, also pointed out another flaw in the hydrogen power plant theory. A dilute hydrochloric acid solution in any of the pyramid shafts would quickly dissolve away the surrounding limestone. I think these are valid arguments to prove that the Great Pyramid cannot function as a hydrogen power plant. Was it another type of power plant then? How about the similarities between the Great Pyramid and the Tesla Tower? Was the Great Pyramid an ancient version of a wireless energy plant like the Tesla Tower? There are claims that the Great Pyramid might have acted as a giant battery, using power generated from aquifers beneath the structure. The lining of the shafts is conductive, and the limestone that was once covering the outside acted as an insulator. The gold cap on top transmitted energy like a Tesla coil. The following similarities are stated by many. Both the Great Pyramid and the Tesla Tower were primarily non-metallic, built on a porous limestone foundation riddled with saltwater aquifers, with tunnels dug deep underground below the water table. They both were tall structures with gold capstones from which excess electricity would discharge. Based on these claims, who wouldn't think that the two were very similar? Well, hold on. There are some misunderstandings here. Believe it or not, all the so-called similarities are misunderstandings. Let me explain. First, the Tesla Tower didn't have a gold dome. It was steel. The gold tip of the Great Pyramid was never confirmed, so it's speculation. 2. The Great Pyramid sits directly on top of the Giza Plateau, which was exposed limestone bedrock. Limestone is a sedimentary rock. On the other hand, the Tesla Tower was located in Long Island, New York, where the bedrock is metamorphic, therefore not limestone. Plus, the bedrock in Long Island is relatively impermeable. 3. The Tesla Tower used a wood frame. The pyramid is solid stone. Both are non-metallic, but there is a big difference between wood and stone as building materials. If wood would suffice, then why did the ancient pyramid builders spend all this time to build with big stone blocks instead of wood? Whoever made the pyramids were very sophisticated. We can imagine that these structures were designed to use stone specifically. 4. The Tesla Tower is 187 feet tall. The Great Pyramid is 480 feet, 146 meters tall. That's a big difference. I read that the original design of the Tesla Tower was 3 times taller, which would be 561 feet, that is 171 meters. Even so, the sizes between the two are not very close. 5. The Tesla Tower was probably not connected to a saltwater aquifer. There was an underground shaft beneath the tower, 120 feet, 37 meters into the ground. Tesla stated at the bottom of the shaft he had special machines rigged up which would push 16 iron pipes, one by one, and then the current through these pipes takes hold of the earth. He didn't mention anything about water. Iron rusts faster in salt water. Why would he use iron pipes if the shaft was designed to connect to salt water? It doesn't make sense. On top of that, there is no proof that the Great Pyramid was connected to an aquifer either. In my last video, I explained why I think the Osiris shaft and other shafts on the Giza Plateau were parts of an ancient mining system. The video link is above. The shafts and the Great Pyramids are all free of any Egyptian hieroglyphs and murals, while their construction showcases highly sophisticated technology. The Osiris shaft and the Pyramid of Khufu also share the same large tool marks that resemble modern machine marks. Hence, it is possible that the shafts and the pyramids were built around the same time with similar technology. The first shaft in the Osiris has obvious erosion rings, but the lower levels and shafts have no clear signs of erosion. Interestingly, on the Sphinx body, there appears to have similar erosion marks. The Osiris shaft is on the Giza plateau, and the Sphinx is located on a lower plane. Therefore, the Sphinx body could be on the same rock stratifications with the first shaft of the Osiris. I think this could be an indication that the Sphinx and the Osiris shaft existed around the same time. Based on the erosion marks on the bedrock surrounding the Sphinx, geologist Dr. Robert Schoch dated the Sphinx to the end of the last ice age, over 12,000 years ago. Therefore, the Osiris shaft and the Great Pyramid might be equally ancient. The Giza Plateau is at the opening of the Nile Delta and its estuary. Scientists have pointed out that the groundwater table at coastal areas is associated with the sea level. If the Giza complex was created over 12,000 years ago, then during that time the sea level was about 60 meters lower than today. Therefore, we can assume the groundwater table at the Giza back then would also be about 60 meters lower than today. I wonder if this low water table will be sufficient to generate energy as described by the aquifer power plant theory. By the way, it's also possible that the Giza shafts and the pyramid complex was built even earlier, possibly during the 1,000-year-long drought event of HS1, when the water table would be about 100 to 120 meters lower. Building pyramids involves an insane amount of labor. One thing we can be sure about is that they were built to last. This means their original purpose must have been well thought out, because no one wants to waste all this time and labor to build something temporary. If the pyramid was designed to draw energy from an underground aquifer, then the engineers and architects should have considered groundwater fluctuation. They would have thought about the instability of the water table and the unreliability of building power plants this way. Okay, so now we can see that the claimed similarities between the Great Pyramid and the Tesla Tower are based on speculation and inaccurate information. There's another thing worth mentioning about the Tesla Tower. I will quote Tom Lee, a professor of electrical engineering at Stanford University who calls Tesla a hero and have studied Tesla's patents and notebooks. About the Tesla Tower, Professor Lee said, quote, "It's certainly a nice-sounding dream, but as with everything else, the fantasy kind of falls apart the closer you look at the details. If you're going to deliver a useful amount of power to an arbitrary point somewhere distant, that means you're going to have to be spraying an enormous amount of power to lots of other points that are not necessarily using the power. In principle, yes, you can in fact supply energy this way, but it will be a horribly inefficient way to do it," unquote. Most people don't want to live near a power plant or power lines. Some research papers argue that long-term exposure to high-voltage wires can lead to health problems, such as childhood leukemia. Some papers claim high-voltage wires don't cause cancer. But no matter what, multiple states in America have mandated safety clearances and setback distances around power lines. Other countries, such as Great Britain, Finland, Switzerland, Bulgaria, and Israel also have setback requirements for high-voltage power lines. Austria requires underground burials of all new transmission lines. Safety clearance. That's a pretty telling term, isn't it? To be safe, we need to stay away from the power lines at certain distances. If the Pyramid Power Plant and Tesla Tower did work and constantly emitted microwave radiation or electricity, then all living creatures on the planet would have been exposed to this giant electromagnetic field. Let's say we want to power up heavy machinery with wireless power. This wireless energy needs to be at certain watts to make this happen, right? That means this giant magnetic field needs to be very strong. Thus, everyone would have been living within this strong magnetic field, which would be like living by power lines, right? I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, this might not be a good thing. Not too long ago, a company called Giza Technologies built a modern version of the Tesla Tower in Texas. Here is a 2019 article with a very daring title, The Death of the Power Cable: How a U.S. wireless power company is revolutionizing energy supply. However, this company filed for bankruptcy in October 2020. Okay, I think I have reviewed enough evidence to argue that the Great Pyramid was not a power plant. Then what was it? Or better yet, what were all the big pyramids? As I mentioned earlier, we shouldn't single out just one pyramid. We need to look at them as a whole. I think there is no way that the pyramids was built for form only. They must have a significant function. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the only one with both above and underground chambers and passageways, while the other large-scale pyramids has minimal openings and almost all solid, sitting on top of underground chambers. Who would build such massive structures that one can't even use? Even for the Great Pyramid, if the goal was to create chambers and pathways, then it was completely unnecessary to pile up all these stone blocks. If the builders just skipped every 10 blocks, a lot of labor would have been saved, and the structural integrity wouldn't have been impacted. Then why would the ancient builders choose to waste so much work and building material? Unless it was their intention to pack as much material as possible. Wait, is that it? The way these pyramids were constructed indicated that they were designed to contain as many blocks as possible. This could be their function, which was to safely store enormous amounts of blocks. What kind of blocks need to be stored this way? You might think this is ridiculous, but let's look at this in context. On the Giza Plateau, the large-scale shafts and underground chambers might belong to an ancient underground mine. The shafts are very close to the pyramids. The Great Pyramid shares the same tool marks with the Osiris shaft. It's conceivable there was a fundamental connection between the Giza pyramids and the underground mining system. If these ancient shafts were excavated for mining, then what possible role could the pyramids have played in this complex operation? I believe I have already been hinting at and pointing you towards my provocative theory on the purpose of the Giza pyramids. In my next video, I'll lay out details to explain my novel theory. There is more to come. If you have any insights, please leave me a comment. If you like my video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Don't forget to hit bell button so you'll be notified when I upload new videos. I have a wide range of topics that I want to share with you. This is Curious Being. I'm Tina. Thanks for watching and see you next time.